Now we've already looked at how to use a low opacity brush to create shadows, but for sophisticated shadows that are cast on the ground, like this one, that method would be very time consuming. I'll show you a much easier method. First, hold Control and click on your layer mask. That will select your figure. Then you're going to create a new layer. We'll put it in front just so you can see what's happening. You don't actually have to do that on yours. And then we're going to right click inside the selection, although you have to have a selection tool in order to do this. Right click inside the selection and go to Fill Selection, and we're going to fill it with black. Now you can see we've now got a total silhouette of our figure. Okay, with the selection tool still on, we're going to right click inside that silhouette and click Free Transform. Now down at the bottom you'll see there's an option called Skew. Skew lets you distort an image by grabbing individual boxes on the edge there and stretching or bending things. We'll come back to that in a moment. But go down and click the one that says Scale. We're going to use that, and we're going to take the top box and pull it down so that the shadow is now stretching down below the figure. Now we can go back to Skew, grab those corner verts, and have the shadow get bigger as it comes towards us. So that's simulating perspective. We can stretch it out as much as we want until you get the shape that you like. It's going to obviously depend on where your light's coming from. Then we'll go up to our opacity slider and reduce the opacity so that the light doesn't look, the shadow doesn't look quite so stark. Also, it's not quite in the right spot. There's a little bit of a gap between the shadow and her foot. So we're going to click on that shadow, and we're actually going to rotate it slightly so that her feet are more attached to it, and then we're going to use the arrow keys to just nudge it up a little bit at a time. Now because my shadow is on the layer above my figure, the shadow's starting to overlap her feet. So I'm going to take that layer and put it back under where it should be. So this is pretty good, and if you had a really sharp light source you might leave it like this, but I'm going to blur this by going to Filter, Blur, and then Gaussian Blur. And the higher you put the slider up, the more blurry it gets. So if you've got a very diffuse light, you want a lot of blur. If it's a very sharp light, then you want less. So you can adjust it to suit your taste. After that, it's just a matter of fine-tuning and nudging the shadow around until it looks like it belongs there. So you can see how this could save you a lot of time rather than trying to paint this with a low opacity brush.